Hi, it's Vishaka here, speaking from the Bhakti Yoga Institute on the outskirts of West London. For those of you who have been following our Seeking the Essence series, you'll have seen in our last video, we discussed God and how one could possibly come to the conception that such an absolute, infinite, supreme conscious being does exist. And so if one could come to such a premise, then the next question is, what is the nature of that infinite being? And so that's what I'd like to discuss today. This is something that is debated upon throughout religious, spiritual traditions throughout the world. We turn to the Vedas for our answers because we find there such a comprehensive and systematic body of knowledge. And what we find there is that the various conceptions of the infinite that exist, is it an energy? Is it a consciousness? Is it a light? Is it a person? If so, what kind of person? We find that all of these ideas, they are harmonized, they are accommodated for in a very clear and systematic way. It's not that one conception has to invalidate another conception. This is the type of argument that goes on. How can you say that God has form? That's a blasphemous conception. How can you say that God doesn't have form? That's a blasphemous conception. This type of debate goes on. But what we find in the Vedas is that all of these different conceptions are accommodated for. They all have their place. However, the catch is that there is a gradation. We do recognize a gradation in the value of particular conceptions. So anyhow, let's have a quick overview. We find three main conceptions described within the Vedas. The first of those is known as Brahman or Brahma and refers to the infinite as a great, vast, ever-expanding, also conscious light, energy in which everything is encompassed, everything is sustained by. And this is a conception which many persons identify with. Perhaps we could safely say that nowadays it's an idea which is increasing in popularity. Different names are used, but this idea of a great impersonal consciousness or energy is we come across it all the time in different lines of thought. It's something that people can relate to very easily. And one reason for that is that we see this world that we live in, which is a world of personality, of color, of movement, of dynamic movement, of cycles, of duality. We see that's the nature of this world. And we also see that this is a world of suffering, this is a world of death, mortality, disease. And so what we tend to do, or what many persons tend to do, is to equate these two things, to equate variety with death, temporality, mortality. Duality equals mortality. So persons think, well, we see this is the nature of this world, therefore whatever is divine, whatever is spiritual, must be just the opposite. It must be void of personality, of variety, color, movement, emotion, and so on and so forth. And so it's easy for them to accept the idea of a formless, infinite being. And it's also something that people feel in their daily lives, when they go out for a walk in nature, climb a mountain, watch the sunrise, watch the sunset, we can have these moments, when we're eating a meal, when we're talking with friends, we feel this spiritual connection with the environment. And so persons, they come in connection with this kind of expansive feeling of divinity, and they think to limit divinity to a particular form, it just doesn't make sense. So this is an idea that many persons subscribe to. Srila Sridhar Maharaj, my grandfather guru, he told of one occasion when he was a young man in Calcutta. He was studying at university, and he came across some kind of sadhu, an ascetic type, who looked like he'd just come down from the Himalayas. And this was before Srila Sridhar Maharaj had taken up this path of Gaudiya Vaishnavism or Krishna consciousness. And so he approached him. He was seeking, and he asked him, "Have you seen God?" This is the $1,000,000 question. And that man, he responded to him with a very impressive voice and this very commanding tone. Can't you see him? Don't you see him? Don't you feel him in the sky, in the earth, in the trees, in the air? Don't you see him? Can't you see him? So this is something that many persons do feel, in their daily lives. And so this is described. This is something that is acknowledged within the Vedas and referred to as Brahman or Brahma. And the root meaning of Brahma is that which is greater than the greatest and always becoming greater. So this is the Brahman aspect of divinity. And then another expression of the infinite which is described is known as Paramatma. So the word Atma, many persons are familiar with. Atma means soul or self. And then the word Param, it means supreme or great. So Paramatma means the supreme soul or the super soul, the great soul. And it refers to a very tiny expression of the infinite, which is always staying close to the Atma. So it is said that wherever there is Atma, there is also Paramatma. There's one verse in the Upanishads, I believe, which describes, it gives a very nice analogy, which compares these two souls, the finite soul and the infinite soul, as being like two birds perched on the branch of a tree. And the Atma, the finite individual soul, as a member of this reactionary, entangling world of mundane duality, is depicted as a bird that is very busy eating fruit. So signifying, individual, selfish, reactionary enjoyment. And then as a result of that engagement, negative consequences come. So the conditioned soul of this world is depicted like this bird, very busy eating fruits, and the Paramatma is portrayed as this silent bird who is simply sitting there as a witness. So this is the role of Paramatma, existing within the heart and sustaining the existence of every individual living entity, and also existing within every atom. So Paramatma is all penetrating, all pervasive, as the Brahman conception, manifestation is all accommodating, all expansive. So the Paramatma conception is all pervasive and all penetrating. So we have greater than the greatest, we have smaller than the smallest, Brahma and Paramatma. And then there's also a third conception, a third expression of the absolute, the infinite, which is described, and that is known as Bhagavan conception. And the word Bhagavan literally means who is the holder of opulence or qualities, and it indicates a personality of Godhead, an expression that we can relate to and actually have a relationship with. The Brahma conception has no particular form, does not have particular personality, so we cannot engage in a relationship with Brahman. Paramatma is a little more developed because there's some form. He's described as having a very beautiful form. However, he's mostly acting in the role of a witness, and it's not possible to have a relationship, have personal exchange. And so this is the specialty of Bhagavan, and also one reason why we consider Bhagavan to be a superior manifestation, because the innermost hankering of every heart is for love, for intimacy, for relationship, and that is only possible with the Bhagavan conception of divinity. So Bhagavan denotes the divine with personal features, with personality, with a great variety of qualities and charm. Now things get more complicated because it's not that there's only one Bhagavan expression, but there are many. There's an infinite number. It's mentioned in one place that as many waves as there are in the ocean, not so many avatars there are of the Lord. So there are many different expressions. It's also mentioned that the reason the Lord appears in so many different forms with so many different moods and personalities is so as to reciprocate with the particular moods and desires that his devotees have, because everybody who subscribes to a theology, they have a particular idea of God which pleases them, which satisfies them the most. And so it is mentioned, for that reason the Lord likes to appear in many different forms, so as to fulfill the heart's desires of all of his devotees. So there are many different forms of Bhagavan. Ramachandra is one popular expression of Bhagavan. Lord Vishnu, and Lord Vishnu is an interesting form of Bhagavan to mention, because Vishnu, or Narayan, he parallels the Christian conception of God the Father. So there's a conception of God there that's a little remote. There's an acceptance that God has personal features, that there can be some type of relationship, but there's also some fear. There's some, we have this expression, a God-fearing man. It's often seen as a good thing. And no doubt it has its place. But so there's this idea that God is this very great and majestic being who we keep a little bit of distance from, we like to give our respects to. And he's our great Father, he's our almighty creator, we are like his children, he is caring for us. This is more or less the Krishna conception and also the Vishnu conception of divinity. So this is what I'm saying, that what we find in the Vedas is so comprehensive. And in my experience so far, whatever conception you come across within the world, you can find an origin for it within the Vedas. They touch upon everything, and we consider them to be the original source of all spiritual thought. There's one German philosopher, scholar, Max Muller, who commented that the Upanishads, he said the Upanishads, which is just one section of the Vedas, he said one drop of the Upanishads can feed the whole world. The persons of all religious inclination, they will find food within the Upanishads. One drop can feed the whole world, and nothing would be missing, nothing would be lost. This is the type of knowledge that we're speaking about when we refer to the Vedas. It's so detailed, so comprehensive, and touching upon anything that you may come across within this world, whether it's simulation theory or God the Father, God and energy, whatever it may be, you can find a reference for it in this ancient body of literature. So as I said, there are so many different personal expressions of divinity that fall into this category of Bhagavan, which are described. Our particular focus, we can kind of fast forward here because we don't have that much time. We don't want to take too much of your time. So we can fast forward to the Krishna conception of divinity, which we consider to be the highest. We consider to be like the fountainhead of all other expressions of divinity. And why? In a word, the answer is rasa. Our line of teachers, they assess the value, the position of a particular theistic conception on the basis of how much rasa is available. The word rasa is difficult to translate. It's a very helpful word, but difficult to translate into English. And the word means something like pleasure, joy. It means the taste in life that we're seeking in everything that we do, whether, in the food that we eat, in the various relationships that we have, and all the things, all the pursuits that we chase after in this world, and everything that we do. If you go to climb a mountain, to watch a particular movie, to watch a sunrise or sunset, drink a cup of coffee, whatever it may be, there's a particular taste, there's a particular variety of taste, unique taste that you're searching for in all of those things. So that is called rasa. So intrinsically, our nature is to seek after rasa. And this is another point to consider, that a part of our minds may think, there's a part of us that may think we'll be satisfied by this conception of God as an energy or a light. But if we look deep within our hearts, we will know it's not enough for us, because we, by nature, we crave intimacy and feeling and deep satisfaction, fulfillment. So really, we need rasa, we need ecstasy, we need this taste and joy in our lives, and we need a variety of it, in the same way that you're not satisfied by just eating one thing every day, day after day. Many people like pizza, but if you were told you've got to eat pizza every day, it will get old very quickly. On day 3, like, I never want to see another pizza in my life. So there's this expression, variety is the spice of life. That's our nature. If you watch a movie, to just watch a straight tragedy or a straight romance or a straight comedy, it can get a little dry. It makes it more interesting if you have some combination of all of these things. Different flavors, different tastes, different sensations and feelings. This is what makes life something enjoyable and exciting. And so therefore, our line of teachers, they assess various religious, spiritual, theistic conceptions on the basis of how much rasa it provides, how much rasa is available in connection with your conception of the infinite, the expression of the infinite. And so what we find in the Krishna conception of divinity is something that ordinarily, based on our ordinary way of thinking, we'll think is quite peculiar and nonsensical. Because here we have an expression of divinity who appears as a beautiful teenage boy who has parents, who has friends, who has girlfriends, who has relatives. So we could say that Krishna is everything that you wouldn't expect God to be. God is just the opposite of what you would expect to be. He's also a butter thief. He herds the cows. He chooses to appear in the lower section of society. If we think about it, although we may chase after these things in this world, we're not actually satisfied in a deep way by money, by power, by name, by fame, by knowledge, by acquiring so much knowledge. We run after these things, but they also dissatisfy us. They don't really fill that empty space inside of ourselves. To some extent, temporarily, they can give us something, some buzz. But the deepest thing that satisfies us to the utmost is love and affection. That love, beauty, charm these are actually the ultimate controlling principles, not power, not knowledge, not position. So if you look at the dynamic of a family, ordinarily we will think of the parents as being in control, that they're the ones who are bringing in the money, they're the ones who are laying down the laws, they're telling us what to do, they're in charge, etc., etc. And the children, they're under the control of their parents. So if we think like in a hierarchy, if we think of power as being expressed in a hierarchical sense, then we'll think of the parents as being the topmost. But if we flip this around and we think, well, hang on, let's think about this. The parents are going out working hard all day for what? To give supply to their children, to please their children, so they can give the children what they need and what they want. Meanwhile, the children, they're just playing. The children are having a good time. Not only that, but if they make one gesture, make one look, they can have their parents down on their knees, succumbing to their smallest whim. How is it possible? How is it possible that someone who's the ruler of a great country, let's take someone who's a dictator, maybe they'll snap their fingers and 50 persons will come running to attend to their request. A ruler, a dictator who can press a button and have a bomb detonated. How is it possible somebody like that, they could come home and have a 2-year-old child just tug them on the finger and have them come down on the ground and play piggyback with them? How is such a thing possible? How is it possible that we've seen so many rulers, great powerful persons throughout history, who've abandoned everything that they had. We can name persons like that. We all know persons like that. Literally abandoned everything that they had in this world for the sake of love, for the sake of somebody who they loved. So love is actually the ultimate controlling principle. Love is the highest power. And we get some hint of that within this world in our daily lives. But it is only in Krishna's land, in Krishna's abode, in Krishna's dealings, loving dealings with his loving companions. There, love is the only law. There, it is only there that we see love is fully expressed. And so it is for the sake of love, for the cause of enhancing and intensifying the exchange of love and rasa, that God chooses to assume this posing as being a very simple, charming cowherd boy, Krishna, the all-attractive Krishna. This is the meaning of Krishna, who attracts and gives joy. This is his nature. This is his tendency.